Hi guys. Today I am stepping back from working on the battle axe piece to knock out something else I've been meaning to for a while, which is carbide insert holders. Now, these four pieces here are tungsten carbide, if I remember right. Yeah, but essentially they're a heck of a lot harder than high-speed steel and your other flavors out there, so they excel at cutting metal. However, seems for some reason most of the holders you can get for these are made for CNC machines, not, you know, 1920 something manual lathes. I'm guessing date-wise. Honestly, I don't really know what mine is. I could dig up the serial number and look, but I've not yet. Anyway, so here, let me grab you one of the ones that gets used for a CNC machine. And one of the others. So, this is one of the ones that you'd see used in some CNC machines, maybe some of the larger manual engine lathes out there, etc. And honestly, I don't have the inserts for this particular one, but I got this one, and I also have a slightly smaller one here for triangular inserts, both of which I got for about 20 bucks. And I wanted those so I'd have a reference to go off of when I was going through and designing and building my own carbide insert holders. So this little one I do actually have the inserts for, and it is slightly different. This one uses these little triangular inserts. And you'll notice there's no hole in the middle of them, unlike these four. These four are ones I have a bunch of. I know a guy, he hooks me up with tons of them that have been used and abused at a major manufacturing place, and he ships them to me by the pound, and I pick out the ones that are actually worth a damn still. And cheaper than me buying it new, honestly. But regardless, this little triangular insert, it goes in here and it seats in there very, very nicely. And then you go through with an Allen wrench and you tighten this little holder doohickey down, and it is also holding this triangular piece just a few degrees out of being 90. So what that means essentially is it is holding this rather than straight. It kicks it down just a hair, so you've got that sharp edge of the 90 with a heck of a lot of meat behind it approaching the steel to actually cut it. And that's how it works. So what I'm going to be doing is basically building something similar to this. Well, kind of similar in terms of it holding a thing in there, but rather than going through and having an arm or some such to actually hold it down, I'm just going to be using a machine screw right down through the middle on these, because there's a hole there. It's convenient. I have taps and dies. I might as well. The other thing I'm going to be doing different is, since I have 4 different flavors to work from here, I'm going to be using 2 different sides, or each end of my stock, to build the thing. So essentially what that means is I'm either going to have like this corner and this quarter having tools on them, or I'm going to be more likely changing the whole profile of the end. But it should work. We'll see. Anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and get these prepped and lay some die chem on them after I get the worst of the scale off, so I can actually go through and trace out the shapes I need, and then I'm gonna start cutting everything down to size. Later. Hello again, guys. Alright, so I've got these all covered with die chem. I got majority of the mill scale sanded off them, which means that I can go ahead and do the majority of my layout lines now. One other thing that I made it a point to do, bottom on all these, I mean, it ain't perfect by any stretch, but it's pretty flat, fairly parallel. Doesn't need to be perfectly parallel, but one side on each of these needs to be mostly flat, so I've got a uniform base to work off of. So when I do put that slight angle to it, it's not going to vary due to either mill scale on the bottom of the pieces, or, you know, just because there's a little dip in there because the steel's hot rolled rather than cold rolled. So next thing we got to do is layout lines. So the one I'm actually gonna show you guys me doing is this one. It's 60 degrees. You've got a slight curve on this edge, and when you flip it over, the opposite of this edge, you've got that slight curve again. That means you have a sharper cutting edge for when it's actually leaning into the piece. Pretty handy, at least I think so. But this is definitely the one I'm going to start with. Now, I already figured out and did the measurements on this to know that it's 60 degrees up here, 60 degrees here. That gives you 120. And as this is a square, that means you've got, oh, what would it be? I was having a brain fart there for a moment, I'm sorry. It should be 90, 90, 180, 270, 360. So 360 in total. And my brain wasn't kicking over there. Horribly embarrassed by that. Horribly. But, so that means that this side here, this side is going to be parallel with this edge, and that means that from this edge I'll need to have a 60-degree angle here, so it's going to follow this exactly. So now it's layout, rough cut, and then actually mill it in the rest of the way to dimension, then go through and mill the actual seat in place. Now, I will be using my lathe as a milling machine, as my big old Lagoon mill. I've not got a VFD for it yet to actually have 3-phase power in the shop. I'll probably be doing that the next month or so. If there is interest in me showing you guys what a VFD is and how to wire it in and everything, you guys can watch along while I learn how to actually wire it in. As for what it does, it's a digital doodad to give you, to convert single phase power into 3 separate phases, kinda. It does it all with square waves. But it is, as far as the motors, which are analog, are concerned, a perfect balanced 3-phase power supply, which I think is pretty damn nifty and fun. Anyway, I'm all elbows and such, so I'm going to do my layout off camera, and probably the initial cut to have a 60-degree angle here, and then I will come back on and show you guys the rest of the layout here. Alright, so this is a piece you saw earlier. I've got it line here that is at 60 degrees. This is a little thing, I think it's Tag, that sells these little whatchamacallit, attachments for the cross slide on their milling machine, or not milling machines, excuse me, on their lathes, on their micro lathes, and does not take a great deal to make a T-nut with an angle grinder and drill press and a tap, and boom, it actually fits onto the old school South bends. This is a high-speed steel router bit. Believe it or not, Harbor Freight, but they actually use M2 in their spiral router bit sets that are for wood. And as it turns out, a lot of steels used for cutting, a lot of high-speed steels used for cutting steel are also M2. As this piece is only mild, it does fine. I've actually used this one quite a few other times for doing the same thing. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is I've got my compound here. It's already set to 60 degrees. And pretty much all I'm going to be doing is feeding this in till it just starts to catch, and then go in with the cross slide to get my first initial cut. And essentially I'm just going to get it to where I don't have any of the material left on here. So, well, until this face is flat and flush. I'm also going to have to lower it down some to get the other side, but as my lathe is not a milling machine, I don't want to try. I want to avoid doing any climb milling as much as I possibly can, because that's not something that is really going to work well for it. So I'm going to fire this up. You guys can watch me do this thing, and you'll get the general idea. After I plug it in. Contact. So that is one end of this cut to the correct angle. So now I get to do the other side. And that's essentially it. I'll be doing that 4 more times. And then I'll be back on to show you my process for actually cutting the relief for the carbide bits. So, talk to you in a bit. Alright guys, I've got all 5 ends of these 3 that I'm going to be using for cutting tools milled down, and as you may notice, I went ahead and did the cutout for this one since this little button is about 1/2 inch and the end mill I'm using is about 1/2 inch, and I went ahead and also did a 3-degree angle for this seat, so this is sitting just ever so slightly that way in there. These 4 I've just got marked off right now. I'm going to be going through and actually drilling a pilot hole at the back end on all 4 of these, so I don't have to fight quite as much with the with fitting the end mill bit in there. However, as I got a late start today and there was a 6 other things that I had to also see to today, this is as far as I got. On the bright side though, I've got everything set up and pretty well situated, so I should be able to get back on this and get it done fairly quickly tomorrow. If you have any thoughts, commentary, suggestions, or ideas for making this work in a different fashion, that's actually something I'd like to hear, because I'm giving these my best guess based on what I've seen for a couple of commercial carbide insert holders, and I'm borrowing what I think will work, but I am by no means an expert when it comes to the actual carbide bits. I am an expert at being a cheap SOB though, so there is that. Anyway, I will see y'all tomorrow, I guess, and have a good time.